Hello everyone. In today's lab I'm going to show you a little bit of motion graphics here with using a text or type tool. I forget the exact name of it. They call it text or type. Of course it doesn't come up. So it's called type. So it's going to be a pretty simple little lab. Nothing that we haven't done before. But let me just do a file new and show you how to get to this. So here you're in your default user interface, default viewport, all that kind of stuff. I'm in my modeling tab, and all you need to do is go over to MASH. It's probably in motion graphics too. It's in motion graphics as well. And they do the same exact thing. It's just located in two different spots. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and just kind of dive right into it. We're going to make a pretty simple animation, and we've done a little bit so far, but we're going to go a little bit further this time. So I'm going to go ahead and click this text tool, or type tool, excuse me. And in this type tool, you'll see it says 3D type. Okay, so in my attribute editor, you should have the hang of this by now. I'm going to go to my type 1. Now, I don't really need my grid here either, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. If you want to keep it on, no big deal. It's great to know where the origin is, so you see where it creates it. It basically creates it starting at the origin point, give or take, about 1 over, but my guess is that the original pivot point that this was created from started at 0, 0. Anyway. So with that being said, I have my 3D type. Now, under my type 1, and let me show you how many different things are in this. So if I right click on this little arrow, you're going to see there's a whole bunch of them. It pretty much I don't know exactly why it does this, but I'm sure there's a pretty good logical reason behind it, but it creates all these groups for the lettering for some reason. But we're just going to switch to type 1. Now, you'll see where it says 3D type. I'm going to go ahead and change that. And I will change it to 3D modeling and animation. Okay, and you'll see it creates it in real time, live, right in front of you. That is pretty long. So let's just do 3D, oops. Well, let's just undo whatever I did. So I don't know what button I pressed, but I'm sure this will happen to a couple of you. Let's just I'm going to do a file new scene and go right back to where I left off. Hit my text tool, change my type, and I'm going to just do 3D motion graphics. Maybe that's a little bit shorter. A little bit. So right under here, you can even change your font. This one looks kind of cool. Nope, that's not gonna work. I think I meant to press that one. That one looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna go with that. It kind of reminds me of like some, I don't know, ancient sort of like Egypt kind of font, maybe. I don't know why. I think it's the way that M hangs here. I feel like I've seen it in a movie before, but anyway, so I'll go with that one. It doesn't matter which one you use. You can feel free to scroll through it. Basically, the fonts are going to be based off of your fonts in your Microsoft, if you have Microsoft or Macintosh, either or, your font basically library that the computer knows. So if you install a font, you'll probably would need to close out of this entire program and then reopen it for it to load into the fonts here. But just so you know, you are able to import and install your own fonts if you needed to or wanted to. This one's kind of cool. So you could select any one you want. You don't have to follow the same one I'm doing. I'm going to go with this one just because it shortens it up a little bit. And anyway, so you have your font size. Moving down a little bit, now you can change the size of it very, very easily without having to hit the scale tool, the R button. Now this would do it also, but it's just kind of changing different properties. So visually it's the same concept, but technically they do kind of two different things. But the easiest way is just to change the font size. Tracking, basically, shorten the spaces in between. So now, since it's like a cursive or a script, it's actually looping into one another. If I leave it at 0, or whatever the default was, oh, it was just a little bit closer. It's always, yeah, they are separated. But yeah, either way. So I'm going to leave it at 0 where it's supposed to be, I think. Kerning scale, you can basically change the spacing in between it. I'm going to leave it at the default. Leading scale, don't know what that one actually does. And space width, changes the space width between the words. All right, so I've covered all of those. Now, and then you can also, under the alignment, you can do a center. So if I show my grid again, it should be right in the dead center. Yep. Or you can do right or left or center. I'll stick with center, just so it's right in the middle of my origin. So I've got my text now. I like the way it looks, right? I'm happy with it. If I go into my geometry tab here, and now I can change additional features of my actual text. So let's see. Oh, curve resolution. I have a feeling this is just going to up my geometry, which it does. You'll see it's just upping the amount of curves that are in it. Now, the one thing that it doesn't make this the greatest is if I tap 3 on my keyboard, you'll notice that it's not clean geometry in the terms of that this isn't a tool that you would utilize if you needed to have clean topology, or you'd have to fix it, right? So you'd have to go in here and basically, you know, I would create a line from here, this edge to this edge, and go through the whole process. It'd take forever, so we're gonna skip on that because you don't really need it for this lab. And if you were just doing some quick motion graphics for an intro piece or anything, different scene, whatever it might be, you just render it as is and it would turn out just fine. So anyway, a couple cool things. I don't know exactly what these do. Oh, it just extrudes. It's just changing the length of your lettering, as you can see. Extrude offset. So that actually changes the depth of it. So I'd probably stay away from that one. Extrude divisions, you can add more geometry to it. Or less. And I kind of like it like that. Now, another cool one is this enable bevel. So if I do the enable bevel, you'll see I get that rounder edge on it, where if I go back into my type and I disable it, you'll see it's got a much sharper edge to it. But if I do the bevel, you'll see it gets much more roundish on the outsides of it, which is kind of neat. But also, again, it's going to up your topology because now you're adding the bevels to it. And then you can adjust your bevel subdivision. So obviously, the more you have, the greater topology. You're basically multiplying, at least on this edge line, you know, by at least 4 every single subdivision you make on topology or polygon count. So anyway, that's a little bit about what the tools do in order to create the text and the font. Pretty neat. Now, I'm going to scroll back up here. Obviously, you can add textures to it. We've done it a bunch of times. And then I want you to go to this animation tab on the far right. Again, I'm on type 1. So we covered the text. There's nothing in the generator to really do. Your geometry. Oh, I missed one of these. Just curious what it does. All right, so this tool actually will break up the geometry for you. So I try to hit the smooth button just to show you what it would look like, the preview smooth, by tapping 3. It's coming up with a warning, so I'm gonna hit no, cancel that. And I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it off. I don't want it to crash on you. I don't want you to have to worry about that. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off, but at least now you know what it does. But I wanna go to this animation tab. We're not going to worry about texturing today. We've done a lot of texturing before. We're just going to focus primarily on creating text and then creating a little animation to it. So we've got the animation tab open, and now what we need to do is we need to figure out how to get it to work. And I love and I hate this, because anytime I'm running into an issue, I always call it the checkbox issue. They're so easily overlooked, but you have to go to the animation tab and then click the checkbox that says animate in order to animate it, right? I'm going to leave it under character, and we're going to create some animation, and then we're going to go ahead and see what it does. So I'm going to bring this out 120 frames, roughly 5 seconds. Let's just go 350. Okay. So I've got my animation, or my text here. I'm on my animation tab. I have my animate checkbox selected. And now I want to go ahead and start to create some of this animation, but I want to see what some of these things do first. Delay frames, I'm going to bring this down to 25. And then just double checking to see if any of the settings change. Okay. Okay, so it's doing it per letter. So let's go ahead and just create something that sort of drops down from this sky, right, from the top of the screen, top of the scene, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to set my translate on my Y. Let's do 50. And then there's a couple ways you can add a set key. There's another way you can just right click and hit set key, and the one that's in red is the only one that's been animated. I want to try something real quick, and I want to go ahead and just try tapping S. And if you're on the timeline, so I'm on frame 0, by the way. Let me see if I can actually do. Just a little small for me to see. All right, so you can see it right here next to the mouse. I know it's a little tiny on your screen, but I have my set key. I just tapped S on my keyboard, and that'll set that key. Now, there is a button that I'm hesitant to teach you about, but I do think it's definitely necessary to know. There's this auto toggle keyframe. So when you turn it on, basically anytime you do something to this object, it's going to automatically create a keyframe. The problem with that is, especially when you're new to it and you're not like kind of have the sort of the muscle memory, you'll start creating like keyframes everywhere, playing around with this, and then you're going to be wondering why that's happening. Look at this. That's weird. So that might be because I have it set I set my keyframes to be at start at -50. I ran into that with using the effects tab before. So I'm just gonna sort of ignore it for now. but I'll go back and just double check it before I end this video, as long as I remember to see if that's what's glitching it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this out to like frame 120, and on frame 120 I'm going to change my translate to 0 and tap enter. Okay, well that didn't work. And I'm getting some glitching and I wonder why. So I'm going to run back to this. I'm going to start a new scene. I'm glad this is happening in my video so you can see it happen. If it does happen to you, you'll know how to fix it. So I'm starting my keyframe at 0 this time. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to verbally say and try to show you everything that I'm doing. So what frame is this? So frame 180. Okay. So on frame 180 is where I'm going to do this. So if you ran into the same issue as me, thankfully it doesn't take long to get this set back up. Kind of reminds me of a car company or something. Font. Be like on the back of a vehicle. So this is fine. I'm going to go to my geometry. I'm going to add that bevel. And then I'm going to go to my text. I'm going to center it like I did before. And I'm on my type mesh 1 here. I could always rename this, you know, 3D motion graphics text font, text mesh. So at least this way I know exactly what I'm working with here. Oh, it doesn't let you start with numbers. I forgot that. So it's going to be motion graphics text mesh. In my attribute editor, I'm going to go back to that animate tab. Everything I just did, just playing quick catch up just to see what the issue was. And now I'm going to go back here. I'll start on, I'll just pretend frame 180 is my start frame. And I'm just going to start to keyframe. So I can do it that way. Auto update on set key. So you can do it that way as well. But the other button is down here where I just showed you. Auto keyframe toggle. Pretty much what this is probably going to do the same thing. Anyway, so I'm going to set this translate to 50 again. And I'm going to try tapping S to set a keyframe. On frame 300, I'm going to bring this down to 0. I guess maybe last time I just had to set the keyframe. Either way, I was running into that glitch where the letter C was coming, and as I was scrubbing through my timeline, it was a little weird. But so now I start to get this little animation here. So I'm just going to start hitting play. Now mine's going to be a few seconds before it starts going, so I can show you what my timeline looks like right here. So it's going to start right now. It's going to slowly drop. And there we go. So the other thing I want you to do for this lab is under the animate, I want you to, so all I got to do now is go to my frame 300 and I'm going to change my rotation to 360. And then I'm going to set a keyframe. Now there is a delay on it, and I know why. It's this delay frames here. Since I've already set keyframes on it, I could just say and I set it, just set it to 25 on both of these on my delay frame, so it should play a little bit slightly faster. And now I've got this little animation dropping down with my rotating letters. Pretty neat stuff. You could change the pivot point on the animation, so as these are rotating, you'll see that it actually changes the placement of the pivot, which you could do some cool stuff with. So if I brought my X here and then so that should do it. Enough to display. But for the lab, all I'm looking for is for you to have the text drop from the top to the bottom and then rotate the letters. Let's see. Let's just change it to Word and see what happens. Just want to... I think this is just going to rotate the word instead of the letters. Yep. Looks a little weird doing it that way, but it works. All depends on what you're using it for. And then I'm going to try line and see what that does. Oh, okay. So the whole thing just swoops around. And it swoops around a little oddly because I actually changed my X pivot as it animates. So it goes from 0 to 0.5. If I change this back to 0.5 and set that keyframe, it shouldn't do that weird, it shouldn't do as weird of a wobble when it comes down. And it doesn't. But you get the idea, so I'm going to leave it on character. I think it's kind of neat when all the letters just kind of whoop-de-doop swoop around and drop. And I think that is the entire lab. How to submit it. So I will accept the Maya file 100%. If you are able to run a Play Blast, even cooler. Either one works, honestly. I'll switch it to a QuickTime. My quality, it should go pretty quickly. My scale's at 0.5. Save to file. Browse where you want to put it. I'm just going to drop it right here. I'm going to call it Motion Graphics Text Lab Example. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Play Blast. Now you're going to see this. It's 50% of the screen, or scale, 0.5 of the scale. It's going to Play Blast all the way to frame 500. If I changed my frames down here to be at like 300, it would make all the difference. And then here's my little Play Blast. It'd be great if you could submit this. If you're struggling with the Play Blast for whatever reason, and mine's going to start like pretty late because I changed my frames. And you'll see it plays right there. It's a great way. Now, let's see what my timing is. If your playback speed is going very quickly, I know in a previous lab I've told you to do this. But if you go to real time, it'll play real time. Or if you do play every frame at a free rate, it can go through it very quickly, or it could go very slowly. It depends on your computer's capabilities. Or you can do play every frame max real time. Pretty much going to be the same thing, but that would affect your play blast as well. Just seeing if there's any major difference on it. Not really. So have your text submit either a play blast or submit a the Maya file. I'll accept either or. If you want to get really fancy and do like a render with it, and you would have to remember to add a light, and you can actually render out your animation frame by frame, as we did in one of our previous labs. Which lab was it? Lab 14, the bouncing ball. So anyway, if you do have questions, just let me know. But your lab requirements, make sure it's dropping from the top of the scene. Make sure it's rotating. I don't care if it rotates the entire word or each individual letter or each individual word, whichever one you prefer. And make sure you set your keyframes. I showed you both ways to set the keyframes. I'm just gonna go back to it real quick. So I was doing it on the timeline, just tapping S, but if you wanted to, you could right click and hit set key. I personally like seeing it, everything sort of on here. If I ever needed to do changes to just one feature, I think it's break connection, which would do it, but I undid it. But you can work around it. For this lab, you don't need to worry about it too much. You could randomize the delay. That's kind of cool, and you can do the reverse order. So I want you to have fun with this lab. Please no profanity in the text. Make it definitely PG. But yeah, if you do have any questions, shoot me a message. We're just looking for the type tool. Create your type. It doesn't have to say 3D motion graphics. You can have it say whatever you'd like, as you know, with the PG content restriction, and have it drop from the top of the scene to give or take the center or to the bottom. I set my height to 50, so it all depends on the actual size of your font. If you have an enormous font size, dropping 50 might not seem like very much, so make sure it's enough for me to visibly see pretty quickly and easily. But yeah, shoot me any messages you have with this assignment on Canvas. If you're struggling with it, I'll be here. Just shoot me a call or a text anytime. And other than that, I think I've covered everything. So I look forward to your submissions, and I hope you enjoyed the lab, and stay tuned for the next one. See you later.